Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Superwoman Wellness, where we're determined to bring you back to your superpowered self. I am so thrilled today to welcome an old friend to the show. We actually worked together, I don't know how many years ago. I'm getting up there now. But we are going to talk about something that all of you keep asking me about. How do I lose weight? And the follow-up question, why have I suddenly gained weight? Now, we've been talking about hormones, we've been talking about all kinds of things, but today I am so thrilled to welcome Stephen Perrine to the show. He is a journalist and best-selling author, and his new book coming out very soon, The Full Body Fat Fix, really approaches the topic of weight and weight management with a unique blend of humor and science. He explains how chronic inflammation and an unhealthy microbiome, you guys know that word, are the underlying causes of weight gain, and how classic dieting, which we hate that word, strategies like cutting calories, eliminating certain foods, or only eating during specific times actually undermine our weight loss goals. All right, we're going to jump right into this, Steve. It's so good to see you again. Ironically, you and I worked on a book together, The 21-Day Belly Fix, which was about the microbiome.
You bet.
And now with this new book coming out, I want to know your take, because that's almost a decade ago, believe it or not. I want to know your take on where the science of gut health and weight management has changed. What's new? What's different? What are we missing? We've got everybody talking about everything, and the noise for a lot of my community and my patients is getting overbearing. So tell us why you wanted to write this book. What's new, what's different, and what are we all getting wrong?
Well, the thing that really got me into investigating this is for years and years, I used to drive up from New York City to my home and my parents' home in upstate New York. And I always noticed that when you were down in a wealthier community around New York, people tended to be thinner. And then when you got
Mm-hmm.
up to less wealthy communities, people started to get thicker. And then as you drove back down, they got thinner again.
Interesting.
And it just stuck in my mind this idea that it holds true that in communities where household income is 45,000 or less, obesity is much higher than in communities where household income is 65,000 or more. And it just stuck in my mind. If calories come from food and food costs money, how is it that the less money you have,
Right.
the more likely you are to be overweight or obese? And it just made me think, there's got to be something more here than just calories. And I started from that premise. Like, of course, calories are important, but there's something else going on. There's something that we're not talking about. And what really my journalism and my research really led me to this idea of inflammation as being the root cause
Ding,
of
ding, ding.
obesity, right?
Buzzword.
Inflammation is the master disease. It's the root cause of diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, asthma. It's linked to Alzheimer's, certain forms of cancer, COPD, asthma, and obesity as well. And more, we're talking about obesity as a disease, and that's a healthy way to approach it in terms of taking the shame away from it, seeing it as a medical condition, and being okay with approaching treatments. But the reality is that obesity isn't a disease; it's a symptom of another disease. And I think if we can learn to accept that obesity or overweight is a symptom of inflammation, we can take away a lot of the stigma. If you had hay fever and you had
Right,
runny nose and teary eyes, you wouldn't walk around going, "I'm such a crybaby," right? But you've
right.
probably used the F word, the fat word, against yourself if you're overweight or had other people use it against you. Well, it's the same thing. Hay fever and obesity are in many ways two sides of the same coin. They're autoimmune reactions to inflammation.
So why is this happening then? And I love that you bring up that it's happening in a certain population because I think that's very true. And, and I think it's also happening in our teenage population, regardless of socioeconomic status, because they're all eating in a particular way, right, to socialize and to be with each other. Why do you think this is happening? Why are we seeing this inflammatory expression, I guess, more
Mhm.
so in certain populations than others. What do you blame?
Well, it starts with food. Okay, so the master controller of inflammation in the body is the microbiome, which is something that we didn't know 25 years ago.
Right. Right.
We've only really come to learn it over the last decade or so. That the microbiome is so important in controlling inflammation, and what's been happening as we move the way that we eat to an ultra processed food based diet, what we're seeing is that um, we're overfeeding ourselves and we're starving our microbiome. So today, 60% of American calories are in the form of ultra processed foods, or as I like to
Mm,
call them, pre digested foods. So if you eat an ultra processed food, whether it's a piece of cake or it's a chip or what have you, that food's been then it's been stripped of its nutrients, it's been stripped of its fiber, and lots of various chemicals and preservatives and additives have been added into it. So when you eat that, um, it doesn't make its way all the way through your digestive tract and down into your microbiome. It's absorbed very, very quickly in the stomach and the small intestine. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about the microbiome is that it competes with us for calories.
right.
When you eat ultra processed foods, you get all the calories. When you eat whole foods, your microbiome digests many of those calories. As many
Interesting.
as 400 calories a day on a whole foods diet versus an ultra processed foods diet. So as we shift more to eating fast foods and ultra processed foods, we're absorbing more calories. Even if we ate the same amount of food and the same amount of calories, we absorb more and our microbiome gets fed less.
So, do you think that these ultra processed foods also create a little bit because of that calorie sort of distribution? They create, persistent hunger where people don't feel full, they don't feel satisfied, and they're eating more frequently to get that satisfaction. Is there a relationship there at all?
There are a number of different ways in which that's true. Ultra processed foods are lower in protein, much lower in fiber, often completely absent in fiber. Plus, the microbiome plays a role in pretty much all of our hormones. So, our satiety hormones, for example.
Hmm.
So, when we feed the microbiome, it sends out the signals that we're full. When we don't feed it, it doesn't get to send out those signals, and we're inspired to eat more.
And then, so a lot of the argument, and I have some teenagers in the house, so we've had some of these discussions, but like diet drinks, right? Um, this fat-free, fat-phobic, I should say, culture of, and then
Mhm.
especially with social media, trying to look super thin and ripped and all this other stuff. What is like the chemicals in a diet drink do to the microbiome compared to a regular? What would you say to that?
Well, it's really interesting because sugar alternatives seem to have the same disruptive effect on the microbiome as sugar itself. So
Mm,
they're they're both inflammatory and they both disrupt the microbiome. It's almost like if you look at every negative health effect of sugar, except for the calorie load, that
right.
negative health effect is also there in artificial sweeteners.
Wow. Yeah, I think we have such an issue with food quality, and then this sort of translates too, by the way, and I'm sure you've heard this before. I wonder if your book talks about this. My patients will go to Europe, right? And they will instantly lose 5 to 8 pounds. They land on American soil, they say they instantly start to puff back up again.
Yeah.
And that puffing is always a sign of inflammation, guys, by the way. Anytime you're saying you're puffy, your face gets rounder, those are usually in very
Your,
strong inflammatory
your
symptoms.
belly's getting big. Yeah. It's all inflammation.
Correct. But why is it in Europe that people lose so suddenly? People say it's the walking. They're walking all the time. Is it just the walking or is there something more to it that is more applicable to the United States?
It's the quality of the food. on a number of different levels, right? So when you're eating food that's closer to the source, you're getting more of the fiber, more of the protein that comes naturally from the food. It's also the variety. So a study from the American Gut Project came out recently that found that people with the healthiest microbiomes eat at least 30 different whole plants per week. Now, by that, I
Wow.
mean nuts, seeds, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, legumes, right? So, my book is basically helping you to figure out how you can do that. In fact, I set out at the beginning of the project a 7-day challenge for people to
Hmm.
track as many different plants as they eat. And then I give you a whole bunch of ways that you can eat the same kind of diet that you're used to, but increase the number of different plants. So it's not just about eating superfoods, for example.
Right.
We've been told that oatmeal is a superfood and blueberries are a superfood and almonds are a superfood. So as long as we just have oatmeal with blueberries and almonds for breakfast every day, we're fine. And that's actually exactly wrong. The only superfood is the food that you didn't eat today
Mm,
because you
interesting.
want to go for variety. So look at what you had for breakfast today. You had oatmeal with raisins and almonds. Okay, tomorrow make it walnuts and pepitas, or make it strawberries and sunflower seeds. Like try to keep mixing it up every single day so you're maximizing the different kinds of plants that you're getting into your diet. And that is what's going to get you to that 30, that important 30 plus number that's going to feed your microbiome. Your microbiome is like a little national park. We don't know exactly how many different species. It's
Right.
been up and down, but somewhere around 5,700 possibly different species of microbiota. About 100 trillion microorganisms living in there, about 5 pounds worth. So think of it as like a national park. It's like a Yosemite of you, right? So in a healthy national park, you've got all sorts of different species all living together, and they all eat different things and they feed off of and support one another. When you start to starve off a lot of those species, which is what's happening in the American gut, you're starting to see an overgrowth of certain types. So just like in a city where you've gotten rid of all the songbirds and the hawks and the coyotes, and now you're left with just pigeons and rats. Well, the same thing had happened in the microbiome, and you're seeing overgrowth of things like E. coli or H.
Hmm.
pylori, the bacterium that causes stomach ulcers. So that's why it's so important to feed the microbiome a variety of different foods, because more food, more a variety of foods feeds a variety of microbes.
Okay, so everyone listening to you probably is nodding their head in agreement. However, if they're like me, we're sitting here going, I can barely get the meals together. I am lucky to get my protein grams in, my fat grams where they need to be, my water where it needs to be. And now you want me to vary and rotate all the different plants in my diet. And I'm sure many families would attest to this. If we buy 6 or 7 different types of fruits and vegetables, a lot of times we're throwing a lot of it out within about three
Mhm.
to five days because people aren't eating it. So, how do we tackle that real life issue when, as a culture, we're on the run, we're go, 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 we don't eat seasonally, right? Everything's available all the time. What are some hacks to make this happen? Are there some things you recommend? Like what's a good way to make this practical and
It's all
realistic?
about hack. It's all about hacks. So you like buy a can of cocktail peanuts? No, get a can of mixed nuts. You like lettuce, but you want to get like something healthy, so you get kale or you get romaine? No, get the spring mix that has a bunch of different types of lettuce in it. Um,
Interesting.
it don't it get the mixed berries instead of one kind of berry. Um, sprinkle in things like flaxseed or chia seeds into smoothies or even pancake mix. Try whole grain breads. There are whole grain breads you can buy that have more than a dozen different grains and seeds in them. It's a super you can get to 12, 15, 20 plants in a day just by doing these simple moves. If you're going to make a sandwich, put some interesting vegetables on there. Maybe grow up some vegetables or throw them in the oven and have them in the fridge and layer them on top of your sandwich. Ordering a pizza, get some mushrooms and some olives and some broccoli on that. Do the same thing with your pasta. Another tip, don't ever eat ice cream naked. If you're going to eat ice cream, get some berries and some nuts on that. Any
Mm,
froyo shop will have a ton of these. Just scoop it on and eat your dessert. My point is not to eat differently, but rather to look for opportunities to add in on top of what you're already eating.
gotcha. And try to get in. And it's mainly nuts, seeds, and plants. Really, that's really
It's
where.
nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains.
What's your opinion on, in the Belly Fix, we talked a lot about this. What's your opinion on fermented foods or, some of the gut building foods like bone broths or things like that? How much are they helping with this idea of resetting your microbiome? And then kind of a follow-up question to that too, like with the hormone work I've been doing, one of the big patterns for women, at least in perimenopause and menopause, is the microbiome shifts under the influence of the hormones, right? So it
Mhm.
shifts into a state where there's maybe not as much ruminococcus, which comes from fiber, or they have an altered sort of firmucetes to Bacteroides ratio or an altered amount of Akkermansia, right? These are all the ones that we know about or we can actually test. Now, what are you seeing when we connect? Like, are there specific microbial patterns that connect back to obesity? Like, can we say on an exam or on a test, like high amounts of candida, for example, are linked to obesity? How much have we been able to nail it down? I guess I asked two questions there, so take whichever one you want. We'll circle back around.
I would again go to the idea like if we're focusing on a handful of different bacterium, we're not focusing on the bigger picture, which is how can we have the most robust and diverse set of microbes possible. We already today, as a modern society, have found a little under 40% of the microbes that we evolved with in our guts have already gone extinct. In fact, there are even efforts to build a microbe bank. I call it the poop bank that
Hmm.
basically salvages the microbes that we have in our bodies in case this extinction continues.
So, okay, so a follow-up to that then is, does it help to populate with a probiotic? Does it help to bring in fermented foods? What role do those type of things play if we're going to say that microbial shifting is the root of
Mhm.
inflammation, which is the root of obesity?
Fermented foods are great. Try to get the kids to eat kimchi. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. My daughter's actually eating it, believe it or not. She's been stocking bone broth and kimchi, and I'm like, huh,
Wow,
wonder where
that's
that
great.
idea came from.
I
So,
mean, yogurt and kefir or kefir, however you pronounce it, and sauerkraut. If you can find unpasteurized sauerkraut, they're great. But it's just not the kind of thing that you're going to have in your diet all the time, except for maybe yogurt, right? So we need to find other ways, and that is by diversifying the diet and including more
yeah.
different types of plants. With regards to probiotics, my understanding is that over-the-counter probiotics are problematic on a lot of different levels. One is that they're unregulated, so you don't really know what you're getting. You don't know how much of what you're getting is alive or dead or how long it's been on the shelf. Number two, a lot of it is destroyed by this acid in the stomach. Number three, you're only by law allowed to sell three different kinds of bacterium in a probiotic. Well, again, we're trying to repopulate 5,700 different species, not three. So you are probably not helping yourself with a probiotic. The probiotics that they do study in medical testing have proven very effective, but they are wildly different from the kinds that you find over the counter.
Yeah, we have a lot in practice and we've seen some good results there. And the results that we typically see are things like managing akkermansia, lowering candida, managing bacterial overgrowth. Those are some of the patterns, that we'll deal with over time. Where does, if we think about obesity as microbial and inflammatory, what does that mean for GLP-1 medications, the Ozempic, semaglutides, all that other stuff that's out there right now? Because that I feel like alters the microbiome in a negative way. You're creating gut paralysis, to a certain extent to really blunt hunger. So curious about what you think of that.
Well, I think that Ozempic and uh, likewise medications can be very dangerous, and they can also be very useful. And obviously, if you have severe obesity and severe diabetes and really, really need these medications, then pursuing them makes a lot of sense. But for a casual person, using them is problematic because when you're blocking hunger hormones, you're doing the same thing to your body that you would do if you went on a crash diet or a fast, which is yes, you lose weight, but much of the weight that you lose is muscle mass, not fat. So when you reduce calories dramatically, you lose muscle mass, and that winds up resetting the metabolism lower, right? So now you're struggling to maintain muscle, your metabolism has dropped, and should you at any point go off of the medication, you're going to gain weight at a more rapid pace because you don't have the muscle to store the extra blood sugar in the form of glycogen, and you have a lower metabolism. And metabolism can only go down, it can never go up. We evolved so that metabolism goes down in times of famine, but it doesn't go back up afterwards. So again, under medical advice for someone with a serious medical condition, yes. But for the casual individual, no. If you are on Ozempic or this kind of drug, two things are really important. Still try to eat as many different plants as you can, number one, and lift weights to prevent muscle loss as much as possible.
What would you like to see happen? You talked about the population for poor food quality. If you had to give us, I know you've got your 7-day challenge, but if there's three things everybody listening today could do, what would you instruct them to do to really start to turn this around? And remember, you've got people that are super frustrated. They're used to calling themselves fat over and over again. Summer's coming. The whole bathing suit
Mhm.
thing is stressing everybody out. What would your advice be to them? Like, what is the length of time when you're thinking about weight as a function of the microbiome and as a function of inflammation? What's the length of time as they start to adopt some of the ideas in your book where they can expect to see some changes? And I don't even believe in dramatic weight loss, but definitely changes where inflammation is down. Because I feel like if they can see a glimmer of hope, then that keeps them motivated and starts to keep behavior to where it needs to be to make those healthier choices and drive by the processed food places or the junk aisles and things like that. What would you advise them to do?
I mean, it's been shown that the microbiome can be significantly altered in 7 to 10 days. There was a really interesting study in England by a researcher who had his son eat nothing but junk food, nothing but fast food for 10 days. And by the end of his experiment, the son had lost 1,300 specific species of microbes from his
Wow.
microbiome.
Hmm.
So, if that's the kind of damage you can do in 10 days, you can also reverse that kind of damage and make tremendous growth in 10 days. In fact, uh, even you can actually improve your microbiome in the course of a lengthy exercise session. There's been studies that show that. It's one of the reasons why elite athletes have healthier microbiomes than the average person. So,
So exercise, so that's a great, so it's not just about the plant-based foods, it's or getting a variety of foods. Movement makes a difference too.
it sure does. And again, especially for anybody over the age of 40, focusing on weight training to prevent
Hmm.
muscle loss is really critical. If you make a muscle, show a bicep, that amount of muscle right there in your arm is about 5% of your overall skeletal muscle. That's how much we lose every decade after age 30. So
Hmm.
eating protein in the morning, that would be my number one tip. Lifting weights to maintain that muscle. And then with the 7-day challenge, the plan is to basically try to track as many of those plants as you can and cut out all the junk food just for 7 days.
Yeah.
Like no processed, ultra processed foods for 7 days. And what I want this to be is a lot of fun, not a lot of work and
Right.
hassle, right? I say it's not really a diet, it's a scavenger hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And what you want to do is to make it a competition. Like when I did the 7-day challenge, I got 65 plants. I consider myself the world record holder, but I
Oh,
bet a lot of
wow.
your audience could beat me if they put their minds to it.
Love it. We should host a challenge. We should have everyone turn it in and show us how they got to 70, 70 different plants and different foods in 7 days, and probably have
Yeah,
some
I have
fun
like my
prizes
own
at the end.
diary. I show you how I do it, and it includes
Yeah.
eating at like Buffalo Wild Wings and Waffle Hut. And
Wow.
I mean, it's not like I went out in my backyard and just grazed off of the trees, right? I ate real food in the real world. But it's simple as getting eating the celery and the carrots that come with your wings, or eating the side of vegetables that you get at at the Cracker Barrel or
Yeah.
wherever you happen to eat. These opportunities are right there for us. We just need to grab them.
What about stress and hormones? How much of that with the microbiome and weight do we need to be thinking about?
They really interact very much so. People who have lower diversity in their microbiomes are more susceptible to depression, to
Hmm.
anxiety, to insomnia. There's even some link between the microbiome and alcoholism. And it's because the microbiome, again, it's the master controller of inflammation. And inflammation plays such a huge role in
Right.
our moods and our brain function. And it also helps to generate a number of the hormones that keep our minds and our bodies healthy.
It's all connected, isn't it? Definitely what the gut's doing, responding to the environment, then connecting with the rest of our bodies. It's all connected. I keep saying that over and over again. All right, talk to us about what folks can find in your new book, The Full Body Fat Fix.
So, first thing you find is the firefighting five. And the
What are
firefighting
those?
five is
What
it's
are
a
the five? I need those
it's
now.
a smoothie, a
Hmm.
sandwich, a couple slices of pizza for an appetizer, a plate of pasta, and a dessert. And if
Yum.
you were to eat these five things in one day, you'd have 30 plants right there.
No.
So could you live on pizza, pasta, and steak? If you can do this program.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
number one. Number two, there's a whole list of really just cool hacks for getting
Yeah.
more plants in. Look, I mean, it's as simple as like, eat the celery that comes with your Bloody Mary, or muddle some mint in your mojito and make sure you eat it. Um, so all of those, plenty of those hacks, and then we have a ton of recipes that are very, very simple to make. I really try to urge everybody to start the day off with a high protein breakfast, again, to help prevent midlife and beyond muscle loss. So I've got a ton of protein smoothie recipes in there,
What's your
and
number
that
out of curiosity? Is it like, are you at 20 grams, 30 grams? Just curious, what's your
it,
recommendation for that morning?
well, for me, it's 30. For you, it'd probably be 25. If you're a linebacker, you want a little bit more. If you're a
Yeah.
ballerina, you want a little bit less. It really depends on your body size. But again, my idea is like, can I get as many different cool plants into this blender in really cool and interesting combinations? So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of smoothie recipes, but each one has at least six different plants in it. I interviewed a couple of microbiologists who try to eat at least 20 different plants every single day. So people who are deep, deep in the science are very, very, very committed to making sure they're protecting themselves in this way.
Wow. Fascinating. Well, the book is out. Fantastic. Well, thrilled to talk to you about this really important subject. Weight, inflammation, all connected, guys. We've been talking about that for a really long time. So get your copy of the Full Body Fat Fix coming out soon in a bookstore probably near you. Where can folks connect with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
You just check out my website, which is stephenperrine.com. There you can find various clips, find out more about the book. You can talk to me. I love it when people talk to me and ask questions. And my social media links are there as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. It's good to see you again. We're
Thank
still
you,
talking
Dr.
gut
Pat.
health with one another, so I love that. And for everybody else, thank you for watching and listening to this episode of Superwoman Wellness. We will see you next time.